Welcome to the continuation of commerce. So welcome to the continuation of business units. In the previous video, we looked at the introduction. We also looked at sole trade and partnership. In this video, we're going to take a look at private limited companies. In the next video, we'll look at public limited companies, multinational companies, then in later videos, public enterprise, and of course, we're going to end with capital of a company. Okay, so what's a company? So a company is a legal entity formed by individuals, groups, or organizations to engage in and operate a business enterprise. Okay, so it can be formed by individuals, which are just people. It can be formed by groups, okay, different groups, they come together, or organizations, okay, so that they can engage in and operate a business enterprise. So what is needed for one to form a company? Okay, for you to form or register a company, what information do you need to know? Okay, so the people who initiate the formation of a company are called promoters. Okay, the people who come up with the idea that companies should be formed are called promoters. The promoters of limited companies start the registration procedures with drawing up of an article of association. Remember, in sole trade, there is no any document. In partnership, there is the partnership deed. Now here in companies, there is what is called article of association, which should be drawn up by these people called the promoters. The documents are submitted to the Register of Companies for approval. So once you come up with these documents, you need to submit them to the Registrar of Companies for approval. So let's look at the Article of Association. Just like the way we looked at the partnership deed, let's take a look at the Article of Association. So an article of association contains the internal rules of conducting the affairs of that company that is about to be formed. Okay. It also states clearly how the company is going to be run and managed. So it includes the following: voting rights of the shareholders. We're going to discuss who the shareholders are. So voting rights of the shareholders, powers and duties of the board of directors. So a company has what is called a board of directors, which we are going to discuss as well. So it states what the powers and their duties are. Okay. It also outlines procedures for transfers of shares and payment of dividend. So of course, we're going to discuss what dividends are and what shares are. So shares can be transferred and dividends can be paid. So it outlines the procedure of how these shares should be transferred and how these dividends should be paid. It also outlines the procedure of conducting what is called AGM, Annual General Meeting. So this Annual General Meeting, it outlines how this meeting should be conducted. We're also going to discuss what an AGM is. It also outlines methods of keeping the books of accounts. Also, it outlines the procedure of electing the directors of the company. It should also state the borrowing capacity of the company. Okay, how much can the company borrow, such that in case it fails to pay, the company is going to be able to pay back. Okay. It outlines the procedures of dealing with any alteration in the amount of capital. Okay, so any change in the amount of capital, how are we going to deal with it? So it outlines the procedure. It also outlines the procedures of distributing profit and carrying out auditing. Okay, so it outlines the procedure of how the profit is going to be distributed and how to do a process called auditing. Okay, So auditing, it's a process that is done to make sure that no figures in the, for example, in the books of accounts were manipulated. So it outlines all those details. So once the document has been submitted to the register of companies, what's next? So the register of company is going to issue a document called certificate of incorporation. Okay, so a certificate of incorporation is issued by the register of companies after ensuring that the article of association is in accordance with the provisions of the Companies Act. So now there is a reference document called the Companies Act. This document states what the conditions that are needed for a company to exist. So for a company to be formed, it has to satisfy all the requirements contained in the Companies Act. Okay, so once the document has been submitted to the register of the companies, the register of companies is going to check and compare the document with the Companies Act. Okay, if it satisfies, if it is in accordance with the Companies Act, then they are going to issue to the promoters the certificate of incorporation. Okay, meaning that they have been allowed to start a company. Okay, so it certifies that the company has been registered and incorporated as a separate legal body. So a private limited company can start trading upon receipt of a certificate of incorporation, but a public limited company awaits for a certificate of trading to be issued. So here we're just discussing companies. Okay, remember there are two sides. There's a private and the public. Okay, so for a private limited company, once they're given the certificate of incorporation, they can start trading. Well, for a public, no, they can't do that. They have to await for another document called certificate of trading. Okay, once they receive that document called certificate of trading, that's when they can start operating. So we move on, we look at prospectus. So a prospectus is an advertisement that invites members of the public to buy shares in a company. So if a company has been formed, okay, so it's not always that when a company is being formed, they have money. No, it doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. Okay, you have the idea, you have done the requirements, you have submitted the documents, you have received the certification. Okay, now you may need more money to be injected to have the required capital for that company to work. Okay, so now you have to do an advertisement to invite members of the public to buy shares in the company. Okay, so that is called, that advertisement is called prospectus. Okay, so the whole idea of doing a prospectus is to make sure that you raise the required amount of money, like I said. Okay, and of course it is issued by the promoters of the company. So prospectus may contain information like, one, the type, okay, number and price of shares the company is selling. Okay, they are the shares we're talking about. Again, I'm going to add more details. So to state the type of shares, there are different types. How many are they? The number of shares, and the price. How much is each share? Okay. Also, it should outline, if the company is already existing, the past performance of the company and its future prospects. Okay, what it plans to be in the future. It has to be outlined so that those people are going to buy shares, know where the company is going. These people are going to buy shares. They will become more like owners of the company in a way. So they have to know if the money they're investing is going to yield fruits. It should also contain any other information of interest to potential investors. What this means is, if the company has got a legal issue, for example, if it has an issue, a big issue in court, which is standing, this document should state that. It should not hide that. It should state that so that those people who are investing money know what they are investing into. So now let's look at those terms. Board of directors, annual general meeting. What do they mean? So what is a board of directors? So a limited company is controlled and governed by a board of directors, which are elected by the shareholders of the at the annual general meeting. So a limited company, by the way, a limited company is a company with limited liabilities. Remember, for sole trade and partnership, we talked about unlimited liabilities, which means that the business and the owner are one and the same person. They are treated as one thing. Okay. Therefore, if the business is in trouble, the owner is in trouble. But for limited companies, the business and the owners are separate entities. If the business is in trouble, the business is in trouble, not the owners. Okay. So they are separate. They are two separate entities. So, for a limited company, a limited company is controlled and governed by a board of directors. So these board of directors are people who are controlling and governing that company. So these board of directors are elected by the shareholders. The shareholders are people who bought shares in that company when the prospectus was advertised. Remember, the prospectus was advertised so that money is raised to invest in that company. So once that prospectus was advertised, people were interested, applied, and of course bought shares in the company. So those people who bought shares are now the shareholders. Okay, these are like the owner of the company. Now the shareholders are going to select. The shareholders are going. They are going to select the board of directors. The board of directors are the ones who are going to be controlling and governing a company. Okay, so those people bought shares. They in a way they are not controlling and governing the company. It's the board of directors. Their job is to elect or to choose the board of directors. Then the board of directors are going to run the company. Remember, the promoters, their job was just to form the company. They are also not owners. Okay, but of course, most of them can be part of the board of directors. Okay, so that's how it works. So there is the prospectors, okay, who form the company. Then there are shareholders who buy shares. Then there is a board of there are board of directors which control and govern the affairs of a limited company. Okay. So the board of directors draws up a policy of the company. So the board of directors they draw up the policy of the company. So they're the ones who are going to outline the policy of a given company. And it is headed by someone with a title of chairperson. So the chairperson is the boss of the board of directors. Okay. The powers and limitations of the board of directors are stated in the article of association with the company. Okay, so the article of association of the company, remember, like I said, that it states the powers and limitations of the board of directors. Okay, so it controls them. They can't be too powerful as well. The day-to-day running of the business is in the hands of the managing director or general managers or chief executive officer. Okay, so we talked of the promoters who come up with the idea of forming a company, who apply to the register of the companies. Then we talked of the shareholders who respond to the prospectors and buy shares. Then we talked about the board of directors who are chosen by the shareholders. Then now the board of directors are the one that control and govern the company. Now this board of directors, they have to choose one person who is going to run the day-to-day affairs of the business. That person is called the managing director or general manager or chief executive officer or CEO or MD in short for managing director. So the MD or the CEO is now the one that most of the workers perceive to be the owner of the company or the boss of the company, but he's also he also answers to the board of directors. The board of directors are headed by the chairperson. So that's how that's the structure of the company in a nutshell. Okay, so we look at the AGM now. So the AGM, or the annual general meeting, is a meeting of all shareholders held once every year. So the word annual means a year or once every year. Okay. So the Companies Act requires a limited company to hold an annual general meeting every year. So what is discussed at this meeting, or what's the purpose of this meeting? So the first is there is the the purpose is to approve the audited accounts presented by the managing directors. Okay, so as the company is running, the books of accounts are recorded, but again, people can manipulate figures. Okay, there's because they want to steal money, or they want to do things in a crookish way. So there is an audit team, or the team of auditors, that has to go throughout to check the accuracy of the books of accounts. Okay, once the books of accounts are audited, these are going to be presented by the managing directors to the shareholders. Okay. The second purpose is to elect the board of directors. Okay. So of course, it's not that the board of directors are going to be there forever. They have to be changed from time to time, depending on maybe the performance of the company and the rights. Because of that, this meeting is used as the meeting where they can elect the new members of the board of directors. And it should be noted that only the ordinary shareholders are allowed to vote. There are types of shareholders. There are ordinary shareholders and preferential shareholders. So it's only the ordinary shareholders who are allowed to vote. Also, the purpose of the meeting is to receive the director's report, okay, about the performance of the company, of course. Then also to discuss the affairs of the business. Okay? And another purpose is they deal with issues that cannot or could not be settled by the board of directors. So when the board of directors fail, the shareholders will come in to make sure that they deal with all those issues. So let's take a look at features or characteristics of private limited companies. So the first is membership is from 2 shareholders and no maximum. Okay, so a private limited company should have 2 members or more. Okay, there's no maximum. It can be 2 to 1,000. It can be 1,000. It's okay. Also, shareholders have limited liability. Remember what it means. It means the business and the shareholders are 2 separate entities. If the business makes, if the business is in trouble, the shareholders are not in trouble. Shareholders are the owners of the company. It is registered with the Register of Companies. Capital is raised through the sales of shares. Okay, so of course, when the promoters have come up with all the documentation, they have to state the amount of capital needed to have this business running. Then to raise this capital, they are going to sell out shares, which and whoever is going to buy those shares will become the shareholder. So capital is raised through the sale of shares. Of course, it holds annual general meeting. It is controlled by the board of directors elected by fellow shareholders at the annual general meeting. There is also continuity of existence even after the death of important shareholders. Okay, company continues to exist. It has a separate legal status, meaning that if it has done something wrong, it won't be the shareholders who go who are going to be jailed, or who are going to appear in court. The company has to do that. Okay, the letter LTD, which means limited, is written after the company name. So the letter LTD which means limited is written after the company name. Shares are not sold at stock exchange. Okay, so later we'll learn type of a business entity where shares are sold on the stock exchange, not a private limited company. Shares are not transferable, so you cannot transfer the share from one owner to the other one. Financial records are not filed with the register of companies. Okay, financial records are kept by the company and not filed with the register of companies. It can start trading as soon as it is incorporated. Okay, it doesn't need another document. Once it is incorporated, then it can start operating. Let's look at some advantages of private limited companies, which we are going to pick from the discussed characteristics. Okay, so the first is all shareholders have limited liability. There is continuity of existence even after the death of important shareholders. It has a separate legal status from the promoters or the shareholders. It has more capital because of more shareholders, and it has more borrowing capacity compared to partnership and sole trading. Okay, the financial accounts are kept. Okay, so the financial accounts are kept private as compared to public. So later when we discuss public, we're going to see that financial accounts are not kept private. What about the disadvantages? So the disadvantages of private enterprise include shares are not sold to the public, hence limits the amount of capital raised. Okay, shares are not transferable. There are more formalities in running a company, such as holding AGM. When you are doing partnership, you don't have to hold AGM. When you're doing sole trade, you don't have to do AGM. You can't have a meeting with yourself. Yeah, there are more formalities in forming a company as compared to partnership or sole trade, such as formulating a memorandum of association and article of association. Shares are not sold at stock exchange. It is more expensive to set up as compared to sole trading or partnership. It is not flexible as compared to a sole trader, as it is governed by two documents drawn up when it is registered as a company. So there's no too much flexibility. There's not too much flexibility because the company has to stick to what is outlined in the documents. Okay, so when it comes to sole trading, there's no special document to control you, so you are free. Okay, so there's no flexibility. Okay, so when you compare partnership and sole trading, here are the differences. So in partnership, partners have unlimited liability. Well, in private limited companies, we're comparing partnership and private limited company, not sole trading. Sorry for that. So in partnership, partners have unlimited liability. Well, in private limited company, all shareholders have limited liability. In partnership, it lacks continuity of existence. We know that if one of the partners dies, the business dies. Well, in private limited company, it has continuity of existence. Okay, in partnership, there is no separate legal existence between the company and the owner. Well, in private limited company, there's a separate legal existence. Okay, in partnership, it is owned by partners. Well, in private limited company, the ownership is by shareholders. In partnership, members can be between 2 to 20. Well, in private limited companies, they can be 2 or more. Okay, they can go even above 20. Partnership is controlled by partners. Well, private limited company is controlled by the board of directors. Partnership lacks borrowing capacity. Well, private limited company has a greater borrowing capacity. Partnership, in partnership, there's less documentations which are needed. Well, in private limited companies, there are more documentations that are required to set up. So these are the differences between partnership and private limited company. So this marks the end of this lesson. See you in the next lesson.